Well, hello, Manchester. Folks at Auburn, this is the Progress Report because it's the first Wednesday in November, which happens to fall as the first Tuesday in November, which was the monumental election in our state, in our country. I mean, just unbelievable, unbelievable. I don't think anybody thought what happened was what was going to happen, but it did. And who could we have here better to talk about this than two deans? The Dean of the Senate, Lou D'Alessandro, New Hampshire. The Dean of Political Reporters, Kevin Landrigan. Who knows where all the bodies are buried, don't you?
I try, sure. Yeah, I do.
And you know, we had an unbelievable result in this election. I did not run for re-election myself. I was feeling pretty bad about that until I realized if I'd won, I would have been in the minority in the State House. Lou has to deal with the fact he's going to be in the minority in the New Hampshire Senate. But he's been on both sides of that, so
Yes.
he's able to overcome that, I'm sure.
Well,
But this election, you know, to me, was phenomenal, phenomenal. I heard something on NPR today that just encapsulated this for me. It said, you know, most of the media, and by God, the pollsters, including my nephew who works for the CBS poll, they got a lot to answer for. Because the belief was this was an election where we're going to restore some form of normality to the country. And, you know, it turned out to be not that easy. Not that easy. This was the election that was going to repudiate Trump republicanism. Trump republicanism was not rejected in this election. Trump himself apparently was. We'll hear that pretty soon. But Trump republicanism was not rejected in this election. In New Hampshire, with the results in the State House, in the State Senate, in the Executive Council, and of course with our popular governor, Chris Sununu, which nobody was surprised that he achieved his third consecutive opportunity to occupy the corner office. I mean, I'm still reeling from this. And I just want to turn it over to you two. Are you reeling, or did you
well,
start this?
I think obviously there were many surprises. All right, and I think if you want to set the stage, and Kevin, you could help me with this. Let's set the stage. In March of this year, on March 13th, we left the State House. That was the day I left my office in the State House. I haven't been back since that day, March 13th. Haven't seen my aide since March 13th. All the work that's being done by me in the state is being done virtually. And in essence, my wife is my secretary, she's my scheduler, and we're using the phone and Zoom in order to communicate with our constituents.
Good thing for her, by the way,
yeah.
but because you'd really be lost
Yeah,
without Pat.
I would be lost
You
without
know,
Pat.
as we know.
And many levels.
Yes.
Yeah. So set the stage,
Right.
and then we embark on a campaign, and we embark on a campaign when the governor of the state is on television every day. Every day he's got at least 30 minutes of free advertising. He's talking. Dr. Chin became a star.
Superstar.
He's a superstar.
Yeah.
So that starts in March and continues. So that's in place. We have a situation where Trump visits New Hampshire. The Democratic candidate doesn't visit New Hampshire. Surrogates come, but never the candidate for president or vice president. So
Well, he did come in fifth in the New Hampshire primary.
Yeah, he came in
Despite
fifth.
Yeah,
your
but
excellent
all
support.
that loose point is all that doesn't matter.
Right.
It doesn't matter what you did in the primary, what you didn't do in the primary.
Right.
I mean, Hillary Clinton got her clock cleaned
Yes.
in the primary in 2016, and she comes back and she beats Trump in New Hampshire.
Right.
So I mean, it wasn't like Biden didn't need to be here, and it wasn't like that didn't play a role, which is, you know, at the outset, this election we've never seen before.
Exactly.
We have never seen a Republican win re-election as governor and be surrounded by an all-Democratic congressional delegation from New Hampshire
yes,
and all Republicans at the State House. I mean, you know,
So
that's
that is truly unique.
yeah, it is truly
I
unique,
think
and
so.
and it only happens, to Lou's point, and he's absolutely right. And he only gotten through half of the narrative, which is it only happens if all these things occur.
Right.
You know, starting with COVID,
Starting with COVID.
followed by the infomercial for Chris Sununu
Right.
for the last 7-8 months.
Right.
Then the presidential campaign, because I truly believe this. I mean, which is to say, Sununu had coattails. He clearly had an impact. He's a very popular guy. But all of that also doesn't happen if Trump writes off New Hampshire. And he did not.
Right.
He had tons of paid people on the ground
Right.
here spending all kinds of time. He had 3 rallies in
Three rallies
2020
this year.
from
Right.
Trump,
Yep.
2 from Pence,
Right.
none from the other ticket. Like I said, all these things had to happen
Right.
for you to see what you saw.
Sure. And Kevin,
know?
Kevin, 11 states of emergency. The governor has invoked state of emergency 11 times.
Right.
That means for 201 days, he was in total control. Now, he's extended the state of emergency.
Right.
In my opinion, he'll extend it through January. Governor has complete control of the government. There is no Senate in session. There is no House in session. By virtue of a decision made in the Superior Court, the Legislative Fiscal Committee really doesn't have any authority over the $1.25 million that came into this state under the CARES Act. That money can be distributed unilaterally by the governor. The governor set up committees to make suggestions, but indeed he has total control over that. So put this scenario in place. You got the pandemic, you got a state of emergency, you got $1.25 billion to give away,
Yeah.
and you get 30 minutes of TV every day.
Right. And
to
you also
explain.
and keep in mind
Tough to
now
overcome.
keep in mind now, okay,
Yes.
just to be fair, you also got Democrats running in the legislature who shut the building down.
Yes.
That didn't happen in every state in America, Lou.
Right,
A lot
that's
of
true.
state houses remained open
Right.
because a lot of legislative leaders said, "I still want to roll."
Oh, sure.
Meaning, we
Agree.
still matter.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
and
yeah, but-
but in the
but Ken-
my point is in the abundance of caution,
Right.
the legislative leadership decided this is not a safe building, so we're not going to keep it open. Now,
Yeah.
don't be surprised, okay?
Yes.
Don't be surprised if you have a governor take complete and utter control of state government when that happens.
Exactly.
Because-
Well
because-
put.
Because
Yeah,
there's no
but-
counterpoint.
But Kevin, we're the only state that has 4 state legislators
that's the
seated
point.
cheek by jowl
Well-
with no social distancing.
But the other thing, Bob, not only do we have the 3rd largest legislative body in the
Right.
English-speaking world, but the average age of this legislative body.
Yeah, I
is
know. I'm not helping
is
on this
60,
demographic.
60 plus years of age.
Oh, yeah.
And what's the most vulnerable area of the age cohort for the virus? It's 60 and above. 60 and above, if you
That's-
get it, you're in trouble.
that's you and I, Lou.
70 and above, if you get it, you're in real trouble. 80 and above, you die. I mean, that's how that's been laid out.
Yep.
And as a result of that, there's an enormous problem in bringing the body back. You're in a very old building. There isn't air circulation in that building. You don't turn over the air in that building,
Right.
Which is
I'm not.
I think you're- but
I'm
you're
not.
right.
I'm not saying there weren't perfectly good reasons why
Right.
you shut it down, but you shut it down,
Right.
And that was a factor.
No
right?
question.
You know,
No
because
question.
You
like
really
I said,
think it was, huh?
Oh, it absolutely was, and I don't
yeah.
mean people in the public reacted. Oh, that's not a good idea. Don't do that. No, what I'm saying is just emphasizing Lou's point, which is when you shut it down, you turn the mic off.
Right.
You turned your own mic off, basically.
Right.
And you let him set the agenda. You let
Absolutely.
him distribute all the money.
Right.
You let him defend all
Yeah,
the decisions
yeah,
he
yeah.
made.
Oh, my
right?
goodness.
And
Oh,
so and there were smatterings of occasions where the legislative leadership could get to say, well, wait a minute, what about this?
Right.
Or what about that?
Yeah.
You know, and to your point, there are advisory boards
right.
and that's just what they are.
Advisory
Boards.
Exactly.
Right?
No question.
Which means you don't have power.
Right.
He has power.
Right.
Right? And
Right.
he permits you to advise him.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But that's the reality.
Yes.
And we saw this, frankly, all over the country
Yep.
to varying degrees, which is we saw governors, as a result of COVID-19, get awesome powers
Right.
and use
And
them.
I would say part of that was the absence of national leadership
Right,
from
right.
the administration.
Sure, absolutely. When
Yeah.
you have a president who basically either discounts the virus or essentially says, states, you're on your own.
Right.
You solve your problems.
Exactly.
You know,
Right.
I'm here if you need help.
Right.
You know, let me
Exactly.
know.
Yeah.
You know,
And that's exactly what he did. Turned over all responsibilities to the states. Gave the governors this money, and in our case, $1.25 billion.
That's a big number.
That's a huge amount of money. And said, not only did we get it, but said, you got to get rid of this money
Right.
quickly.
right.
You have until the 30th of December to dispose of all of this money. If you don't, that money has to be returned to the federal government. And
Nobody wants to do that.
No, and set up a series of guidelines. All of this money spent has to be COVID related. There's got to be some kind of a relationship to a COVID situation which allowed for this money to be spent. So you put those things in place, and at the same time, you have a major election. We're having an election for the president. In New Hampshire, we're electing our congressional delegation, we're electing the 2 reps, and we're electing a senator, and we're turning over the legislature. Legislature turns over at 1/3 anyway.
Right.
Anyway,
Yeah.
1/3 of them aren't coming back.
Right.
This time, it was more pronounced in the shift from one party to the other party, and I think that Governor Sununu's ability to move up and down had an effect on the House, the Senate, and the Executive Council.
Yeah, I think to his, I mean, and again, to his credit,
Yes.
he sort of understood at the end of the day, right, that this election was about 2 things, only 2 things, you know, Trump, COVID, that's it. You know, I mean, and in each state, you know, everything was looked at through that prism, which is COVID. Sununu got pretty high marks for how
Yes.
he performed on COVID, right?
Right.
Trump. Sununu, as we know, kind of bobbed and weaved with Trump, right? Said, you know, I support Trump. I'm voting for Trump.
I'm not going to his rallies.
And I'm not only that, I'm not going to his rallies. He didn't hesitate on a number of occasions, right, to say, I'm not happy with the administration, right? You right? I mean,
Yes.
FEMA, you're
he-
screwing
he-
up.
Right, well, FEMA screwed up,
You're
right?
screwing
He
up.
kind
You-
of had it both ways, didn't
Exactly. You
Oh,
screwed
yeah.
me. I mean, you remember the week before the election, he says to both parties in Congress, fire them all. I think they should fire them all.
Right.
Now, he's not just talking to Democrats and Jeannie Shaheen and
Right.
Chris Pappas and Andy Custer. He's saying to McConnell, you know,
Right. Across the
right?
board.
Across the board.
Yep.
You guys, because you guys let us down.
Right.
You know,
Right.
we waited here
Yep.
for so long for more relief, and you gave us the, you know,
right.
right?
You gave us nothing.
You know, and
Right.
so to your point, because he understood that's all COVID Trump, he was very skillful, you know, in presenting himself not only as someone who performed pretty well with COVID, but people, I don't care how many times you say it, and I don't even care how many times he said it. The voters, that whole Trump guy through and through, it just didn't take, okay? It didn't.
Right.
It didn't take.
Why didn't it?
And because of what I'm talking about, because there was such a contrast on COVID between how Sununu behaved
Right.
versus how Trump
behaved.
behaved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah,
and
people
frankly,
got that, I guess.
Exactly, and that's
yeah.
why. And you're seeing, and this is what I mean by you saw it in many states,
Sure,
right?
sure.
This is why, you know, Phil Scott in Vermont
Yep.
gets to win re-election overwhelmingly as a Republican.
Right.
You know,
In the most democratic state of the
exactly,
nation. Yeah.
because a lot of voters said, you know, he's not Trump in Vermont.
Yeah.
You know, they said, you know, he's taken COVID really seriously.
Sure.
And in some cases, Vermont took even stronger actions than New Hampshire at
Yes.
times
Yeah.
during the pandemic. And,
Yes.
and I think that helped him.
Yeah.
There's no doubt.
Yeah, no, there's no question that the way he handled this pandemic got very, very positive reaction from the public. Very positive reaction from the public, and I think he handled it. He handled it well. He'd bring Dr. Chen. He'd bring the Commissioner of Health and Human Services. Then he'd get up and take questions and give you sort of the roundup.
Right.
You know, and he did the roundup, and I thought very, very skillful. He became very skillful at that. At the same time, the federal delegation, I think they were making their mark. We had a very popular federal delegation. They were fighting hard for more relief, talking about more, trying to get more relief. And I think in Shaheen's case, that she's this. I believe she's the statesperson of our delegation. She's been there a long time. She's well received. She's well respected. Has a lot of juice, and ran a series of the most successful television advertising that I have seen for a long, long time. I remember Warren Rudman's Pinocchio.
Yeah.
Remember that one?
Yeah, I do.
Warren Rudman's Pinocchio set the stage.
Yeah.
Set the stage. These were just as good.
Yeah.
And I ask for your vote. I want your vote. Looking straight at that camera.
Right.
I need your vote. That thing ran so many times I was dreaming about it.
Right.
I'll,
I know.
I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, very effective use of the media when you can't get around, when you can't do those reach out
Right.
things
And this
all
was the
time.
whole thing about Sununu too. I felt like he did extremely well, which is when it came to the delegation, except rhetorically, he had plenty to say.
Right.
But I'm talking about on a day-to-day operational basis, he let them do their job. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Right? Which is, you know, he wasn't, which all governors can do, you know, which is all governors, they manage. You know, you're an administrator.
Right.
And you look at the Congress down there, and every day an administrator basically says, how come they can't do this?
Right.
You know, I do it differently.
Right, right.
Or, you know what I mean? And he very much, to your point, he very much let Shaheen do her thing. He let Hassan do her thing. You let Pappas and Custer, for the most part.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, operationally do their thing. He would comment about, we need this, we need that. But he wouldn't hesitate, and he did many times, would say, Shaheen did well on that. Or I was talking with Maggie, and she made this point, and she made a good point. You know, in a couple of occasions, he remarked specifically about how the delegation gave him this idea about how to spend COVID money. And he said, that
Very well received.
that was a good idea, and I'm going with it.
Right.
You know, instead of everything's me, you know,
Right.
I got all the answers, you know, just come to me, you're going to be fine. He didn't give off that vibe throughout, and it really wore him well. I think people look at what happened on Tuesday and they say, how could this happen? And the party structure, like I said, was very different. But we've seen the movie before, right?
Right,
You know,
right.
which is when you get close, you're a governor, and you get close to 70% of the vote, you're bringing people along.
Yes.
I mean, it's just a matter of how
Right,
many
right.
and where and is it enough, right?
Right.
But when John Lynch twice got at or over 70%
Right.
in 06 and 08, he brought people along.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
I mean, he flipped the entire place in 06.
Yeah, he did.
You know, right? By getting 70%.
One of them was not me, but that's okay.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. And then, and that's why when you saw that number, and we were seeing that number early on, right, on
Yes.
election night, you know, it's over 65.
Right.
You're thinking, at least I was, there are going to be some surprises here.
Yes.
Meaning there are going to be some people who, and we talked about this, you know, off camera, but I think it is important to note, and you pointed it out and you're referencing door to door and the rest of it, and how
Right.
Democrats couldn't campaign with COVID the way a lot of Democrats are very comfortable campaigning.
Yes.
And a lot of and-
Republicans did that.
and right, exactly. And the way, by the way, I mean, we're all old enough to remember, this is the way Democrats broke through when they did at the State House, right? In 06 and
Yeah.
08. And this is how you do it. You
Right.
go door to door,
Right.
you people to people, you know,
Right.
you venture into neighborhoods, not even that politically you're not necessarily comfortable in, right? Because they're not like filled with all friendly people.
Yes.
You know, that so and Lou knows this. I mean, he's always gone those places, but a lot of Democrats
Yeah.
don't go to those places. So you have an election like this where you can't go anywhere.
You can't go anyplace, right?
And you're all meeting on Zoom.
Right.
You know, I'm sorry, that's not the strong suit. Like I said, for Democrats, it's just not. You know,
Well, and then it's kind of not the strong suit, period.
Right.
Because first of all, you've got to get Zoom time.
Right.
And if you're in the legislature, you had to apply for the time, find out when the Zoom was available, so that you could run one of your committees, which I thought was a little crazy, to be honest with
Yep.
you, because hard to do those things virtually. All right. So then you purchase a Zoom package on your own, and we did that, and how do you get the news out to people? We're going to send you this. Tune in to my Zoomer, to my Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
All right, we did that a few times. It worked. You got 35, 40, sometimes 50 people on. But that doesn't beat 300 people at your annual birthday fundraiser,
Right.
which I couldn't have.
right?
Yeah.
And
no.
that was devastating to me and to the people that love to come. You know,
Exactly.
it's an event that we love.
Yeah,
we
it's
love
a
to come and
great
we
tradition.
enjoy and so forth.
Exactly. And as part of all of that, is part of, you know, this is how you motivate
Right. This is how
your supporters,
Right.
how you get them to run through walls for you,
Yeah,
because
right.
that's really, in campaigns, that's what you're asking people to
Yeah.
do, right? So if you don't have those connections, I don't care. You're not going to have the same intensity,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
You know, organizing virtually, organize New Hampshire on Zoom. I mean, you know, it ain't the same.
No, and you have a Zoom. You have a Zoom meeting. Sometimes it lasts 7 minutes,
Right.
and you go ba 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 ba, and it's over. And that's how the Zoom meetings, some Zoom meetings were
Yeah.
conducted.
True.
So what do you do? In that little period of time, you just gather a couple of points, and then you're kind of really on your own. So it was a very difficult time, and he who sees the day, sees the day is very
Carpe
important.
diem.
Carpe diem. And I think the governor sees the day. He found out how to do it, and he had a lot of things going for him. Timing is everything in this life. Nobody knows that better than I. I picked the wrong time to run for governor twice. But add these other items to the list, and you get what we got. Now here's the surprising thing. In most elections, if people vote for the president, they usually stay with the ticket. That's been the modus operandi of a national election. They did not do that this time. They voted for the president, and then they switched. They switched for Sununu. They came back for Shaheen. They came back for Pappas. They went straight down the ticket for Republicans. And that was pretty much the way ballots looked. Now, I've talked to people who did ballot inspections, and they told me that's how ballots looked. It was this, zing, 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 and then straight down.
Was that unprecedented?
Well, I mean, like Lou's saying, it is in that respect, which is, you know, you in presidential years, you often have more discipline of voters.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I mean, we know independents are the biggest party here. We also know New Hampshire has a tradition with a lot of independent voters who are fond of splitting their ticket. You know what I mean? But to a lesser degree, we saw this across the country, right?
Yep.
I mean,
No,
we
that's
did,
true.
right? Which is which is we saw places where, you know, like here, where Trump didn't win, right? But another Republican did.
Yes.
Okay, you know, and like I said, it's not universal, but and certainly not to this degree. I haven't seen it anywhere else to this degree, but and I think part of that was, I think this mattered less here because I think a lot of like national macro messaging here has less impact simply because you were referring to our legislature, simply because government is much closer to people here than it is in most states, if not all states, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But that national messaging is the following, right? Which was, and here's where Trump was very effective, which is, you know, you don't like me, you're going to vote for that guy, right? But subliminally, right, he is saying to a lot of swing voters, do you really trust that guy? You know,
Right.
meaning with Biden, with AOC, with the Green New Deal,
Right, right.
with the
Taxes.
the squad, taxes,
Right, taxes.
fracking, right?
Right.
Job, you know, trade deals, foreign policy. I mean, meaning you saw this in states all over the country where a lot of voters essentially were like hedging their bets, right?
Yeah.
Which is, I'm ready. I'm ready to leave Trump. 4 years is enough. I'm good. You know, I'm going with this guy. But I'm not turning over all the keys.
Right, I'm not turning
okay?
over the keys to the kingdom.
You know,
Right, right.
because again, a lot of voters across the country, this is what I always learn every 2 years. They're smarter than we think they are, and a lot of them they are,
Yeah.
and a lot of them know, for example, in all likelihood, right? They're also going in the polls with a pretty good idea. Pelosi's still going to be Speaker, right, of the House, right?
Yeah.
So, and this is what McConnell and his crowd used to great effect with a lot of swing voters to essentially say, like I said, you want all one government?
Right,
You want Biden? You want Pelosi? You want Schumer?
right.
You know, running the whole show? And I think we know historically the American people aren't all that comfortable with that scenario. It happens, and sometimes we do fine with it,
Right.
but many times a lot of voters are much more comfortable with, you know,
Well, that implies
You
a
know-
lot more ticket splitting than we usually have, doesn't it?
well, I mean, certainly not necessarily more than we have here, but to Lou's point, the split was boom, you know, which was, you know, that's the part that's different,
Yes.
which is, you know,
Right.
which is, okay, Biden, okay, Sununu, okay, Jeannie, Shaheen, Pappas, and then wham, that's the
That's-
difference.
well,
I mean,
that's-
'cause
yeah.
and the ticket split is the following. Even in presidential years, a lot of independent voters will basically, even if they've decided, you know, I'm going mostly Republican, and they'll see, oh, but I know Lou. You know,
Right.
I vote. I think Lou's a good guy. I think he works hard, and he's not a partisan guy. I'm going with Lou. You know, whoever it is. That's what I mean by splitting. Usually, even further down the ballot, a lot of voters try to find some
Yes.
way to get back.
Right.
If you know what I mean,
Yeah,
right?
right.
That whether it's their state rep or their state senator or somebody, they're looking for, you know, I don't really, because a lot of times people aren't comfortable with that. You know, just, you know, and I'm speaking of independent voters. You know, regular Democrats vote for most Democrats who are running. Regular Republicans vote for most Republicans who are running, you know. But there's that whole other universe.
Right.
And in most elections, they try and figure out a way, you know, to shine on both sides, you know.
Yeah, well, trying.
You know,
and I think
it doesn't always happen.
Right, but your point's well taken about people looking down. This is why we have so many splits in certain areas. they go and they look for the one person that they like.
Right.
All right. They love Bob Backus. I'm going to vote for Bob Backus.
Right.
But boy, I'm voting straight ticket for everybody else. Now, I follow. I was at the polls very, very late last night. Believe it or not, very late last night. I didn't get out of there till 11:30 because Manchester votes came in very, 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 very late. But I did notice how the votes were coming, and it seemed to me the split that we're talking about. I voted for Biden. I voted for Shaheen. I voted for Sununu. I voted for Pappas. I went straight down the ticket, and I voted for Republicans. Now, the one district that occurred in my thing was Goffstown.
Really?
That is
Right.
a huge, huge Republican precinct.
Which you carry, but all Republicans in,
Right.
the House races
Right.
won.
And
Right.
I did carry it. Thank God for Goffstown.
and but that's-
Appreciate it. But
right.
but I think that goes right to your point of
Right.
picking and choosing.
Right.
Picking and choosing. But everybody else, bang, straight
Yeah.
down the ticket.
Yeah.
Now, Kevin, the new phenomenon, in my opinion, and I've been in the city elections for a long time, is the advent of the libertarian, the party, and the free society.
Yep.
I-
Free
I-
staters.
Free
Yep.
state. Okay.
Yep.
I want to wear my gun.
Yep.
I want to live like I want. I don't want to wear a mask. And we had a little controversy in one of the wards over that yesterday. I don't, and I leave me alone. Leave me alone. That attitude, I believe, is coming here, and it's strengthening all the time. Benson asked for those people to come. He said, I have room in New Hampshire for 20,000 people. 20,000 people. Well, they're here. They're here.
And many of them are in the legislature.
Many in the
Yeah,
legislature.
and not all in one party, right?
Right,
We-
right.
There are
That's right.
there are
They
They will pick the
Democrats,
party
there
which
are-
seems most congenial to their
Right.
chances.
Exactly.
But
they're
they-
very and that's your point. They're very strategic.
Yep.
They're very,
Right.
they're whatever word you want to use, craven, whatever, ambitious.
Well-
So it's not about certainly not about party.
No.
And they're I mean, I would agree with you. They're certainly a growing factor.
Yeah.
And in a state like ours,
They can make a difference.
they
here.
can,
They
especially
make a
in these
difference.
in these small
Sure.
races. Where
This group came to
Yeah.
Keene,
yeah,
all right, and caused great controversy in Keene.
Yeah.
And they've gravitated across the state, and we have a good section of this group in Manchester. Now, in Manchester, we have noticed an upswing in violent crime, shootings,
right.
stabbings, problems. All right, our poor police officers 24/7. I mean, they're busy. They're really, really busy, and it all falls into the category. It's stand your ground. We pass stand your ground.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
if you're bad and you're bothering me, bang, I'm going to shoot you. That's it. And there'll be no
Undoing
no-
400 years of common law wisdom.
So we have a lot of things that have happened over a period of time here, and when I think of the period of time, it's a very short period of time. In the last decade, all of these things have happened, and you put the frosting on the cake when you get Trump elected president, and all of these things are okay. He says it's okay. I think in his speeches he says it's okay. And his rallies just prior to this general election, I think, had an enormous effect on people. Now, not only the people who were there at the rallies, but the people, for some reason, the TV stations carry these rallies. I don't know why they do it, but they do it. And that had a pronounced effect on others.
Yeah, I think that's true.
And
Sure.
you put all of that together, and what do you get? You get a real sense of instability.
Yeah.
And people want stability. They want to know what's going on. They want to be comfortable in their environment. That doesn't exist. People are very uncomfortable in their environment, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, I've been reading Eric Fromm's classic book, Escape from Freedom, which I recommend. It's pretty dense, but it's good. Kevin, the conventional wisdom, if the vote out is huge, it's good for the Democrats. Didn't seem to be true this time.
Yeah, I mean the turnout, right.
Turnout.
Yes.
Turnout.
Yeah.
I mean, we had
Yeah.
record turnouts. What was the percentage in New Hampshire? Above 80%, wasn't it?
It certainly, I mean, of the voting age population, it's going to be over 70%, which we
Over
haven't had
70.
since '68.
Right.
I mean, and here
and
was a turn.
and of registered voters.
That's
it's-
great for Democrats. We have to reconsider that now, don't we?
Well, I mean, every election is different, and that's I think at least I don't know if Lou is, but that's sort of what I keep saying, which is this is unlike any other election.
Right.
And this is why I say that I would not overanalyze what happened on Tuesday and say that's the new normal.
Right,
In
right.
New Hampshire, or frankly, in the country.
Right. I
Because there's nothing normal about 2020.
Right.
There was
There's nothing
normal.
No,
So,
everything was
You're
was
right.
different.
So you can't then have a result and then say, well, oh yeah, that's what's going to happen every 4
Right,
years.
I agree.
So
Yeah.
Right.
You
There
know.
is no new normal.
Right.
We haven't arrived there
So-
yet.
We have a new normal. It hasn't happened for 100 years with the pandemic.
Well,
Right.
to your point, it's different. It was different. It was strange. Will it happen again? I don't know. But all of these things have to happen almost simultaneously in order for this to happen. You have a pandemic where nobody leaves their house. You have a situation where governor declares a state of emergency, and in New Hampshire, he does it for 21 days. He's done it for 11 times. Never happened before. I don't think it happened during World War II.
No.
So you got that going. You got a ton of money that's sent down from the federal government to try to restore the economy. You got tremendous demands for that money, needs for that money. So how you distribute that money becomes very important in the process. And so all of these things, they converge at the same time.
I think one of the things that people are asking, obviously, after Tuesday is, right, I mean, not speaking for everyone, certainly, but a lot of Americans with this election, right, basically didn't want the country ending up being as polarized as it was before the election.
So
right?
why didn't Biden win overwhelmingly?
And
Because that was his message.
right, well, and just because, I mean, it's going back to some of what I was talking about. That can be your message, but if you've got all these other things going on, competing with that message, right? Don't be surprised if you don't get exactly the result
Right,
you
that you were
thought
bargaining
you
for.
were going to get with that message. So I think New Hampshire, in some ways, is kind of in a unique position compared to other states, and here's why: because of what we've ended up with, right? Which is, and while we're taping this, we still don't know who's going to be president. We can speculate on who's more likely than the other guy to be president, and I would agree with that analysis right now. But at any rate, what we're going to end up with, whoever president is, New Hampshire, fortunately, is going to have some friends with that person, right?
Yes.
Unlike most states, I should say. If,
Both ways.
If Joe Biden is president, a lot of states are kind of bleep out of luck, right? I mean, they're run by Republicans. They're dominated
Even
by
though
Republicans.
Biden
and-
only did fifth place in the primary?
Right, sure, because he won New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And I don't know, but last I
Pretty
looked,
handily, too.
well, and last I looked, that may be an important 4 votes. Even
Yes.
though for 10 months we've been saying, oh, New Hampshire doesn't matter.
Right.
New Hampshire's not a battleground.
Yeah.
New Hampshire
Somehow
is not significant.
we always end up being important.
You remember, Bob? There were so many paths to victory, right?
Right.
For this Democratic nominee. Well, there's a lot fewer than we were told there were.
Yeah.
Going back to your summation about polls, right? So if it's a President Joe Biden, New Hampshire's got a congressional delegation that they've all got the speed dial, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
they do.
Right.
So they can. I mean, he's
Right.
gonna respond to what New Hampshire is asking
Yeah,
for.
yeah.
Now, if it's President Donald Trump through the courts or however, as we were talking about earlier, we've got a governor who is the only one in the Northeast who is a Republican who
Right,
supported the guy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So,
yeah, to some
right?
extent, yes.
right?
Yeah.
And at least in Concord, there are all these Republicans running things. So, we're kind of in a good place.
Yes.
I mean,
Oh, I think so.
and like I said, it's not by design. Nobody drew it up.
Right.
Here's-
It just
you know,
happened.
Yeah,
Okay.
it just sort of happened.
Well,
and
it's certainly the.
and you
the luck of
hope,
the
and
draw.
that's what I'm trying to say is you hope that in some ways New Hampshire becomes, because we have before, becomes a place people look at to basically say, you know what, they're doing it right. Meaning, Republicans are working with Democrats
Yes, yeah.
and to further the state's aims, right?
Yeah.
Democrats are asking the Republican governor, can you help me with this?
Right.
Because the Republicans are going to control the Senate, right?
Right.
So there are going to be times when, a New Hampshire member of the delegation may like to be able to know he or she can call this governor and say, hey, I know we're getting this grant, but it's not out yet.
Right.
And I don't know if it's the Senate Finance Committee or who it is, but can you help me out? And there are going to be times, we know this, right, where this governor is going to need to go to this delegation,
Yes.
right,
Yes.
and say, I got this ask with the administration, and I think we got a good case, but I could really use your help,
Yep.
right? And right, and
Absolutely.
and
Right.
and I know Lou knows this as well. I mean, this has sort of, historically been,
Yeah.
this is, for example, this is one of the reasons why Shaheen is, for example, is as popular in this state as she is, even in a year where Sununu wins 2-1, because Shaheen understands that dynamic, right?
Yes.
And and I know because I've written enough stories about it. She's not shy, okay, about reaching out to a Republican, right?
Yeah, she's done it a lot.
And say, I need your help,
Right.
Yeah. or here's what I can do, what can you do,
Right.
so we can get this
Yeah.
done,
Right.
Yeah, she's a very, very
Oh,
effective
so
senator.
it-
You know,
that's the
about
beauty.
it.
That's the beauty of a 6-year term.
That's exactly.
That's,
know?
that's a good
Yeah.
deal. That's why everybody wants that job.
Everybody wants that job, and I
But they're not all like that, as
Right.
you know.
yes,
In
they-
the U.S. Senate,
Right.
there's a whole in both parties.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of very, very partisan people.
Yes,
Right.
yeah.
Who I don't talk to them.
Right,
I don't
right,
don't
right.
caucus with them.
yeah, and
I don't sponsor a bill with them.
right, and that's we're seeing that now in the New Hampshire legislature.
I know.
Which Kevin,
Yeah.
I never saw before.
Right.
I never saw before.
And that's another piece of
What
the.
do you say?
A Republican saying that I can't co-sponsor
Right.
a bill with the Democrats.
And that's where
I can't talk to
Really?
Democrats. Yeah.
Oh, that's so
I
sad.
was a member of the House
Very
who came
sad.
to see
Very
me about
sad
that.
to hear that.
right. And I think
Wasn't aware of that.
right. And I think
Yeah.
and I think certainly, now the Republicans have control after being out of control.
Yeah.
Many of their legislative leaders would be wise to consider that. Which is, and by that I mean rethink that.
Yes.
Which is, because at the end of the day, you not only make things better when you work with the other party,
Right,
right?
right.
Is in many ways, right? You improve your likelihood of succeeding
Yes.
in the next election,
Right.
right? Because, because like we were talking about earlier, so many voters want to see things get done,
They do.
especially in a place like Concord. I mean, you ain't no in Washington. So,
Yeah, it's
all they
far
do
away.
is talk down
Yeah.
there, and both parties hate one another, and
Right.
you know, but that's not what they expect
Right.
in Concord.
No,
You know.
That's what they're getting increasingly.
Well,
Right.
and that's what we'll see the next 2 years whether we, you know,
That's what happens
you know,
to the-
right.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, we saw this certainly, like I was saying before, we saw this certainly with Lynch when he was governor. I mean, some of the years he was as successful as other years, frankly, if not more so, on some issues, was when Republicans ran the legislature.
Yeah.
You know, and this will be a you know, that song "Both Sides Now," you know,
Right.
meaning Sununu's seen both sides now, right? I mean, right? I mean, which is, you know, which is after 16 he had the Republicans, not huge majorities, but he had the Republicans,
Right.
and then after 18 he had the Democrats,
Right.
and so, and we both know for a governor, there's good about that and there's bad about that,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Both in both cases,
cases.
right?
Both cases.
So now he gets to see, okay, how do I, you know, it'll be real interesting to see how he responds. How do we get the good out of this?
Right.
And then take the good out of
Yeah.
what was over here,
Yeah.
you know, and boom,
Yeah.
bring it, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
So
You
here's a question for you, Kevin. I've been wanting to ask. You know, my nephew works with the CBS
Yeah.
poll, Fred Backus, and you know I'm constantly in touch with him. And he, I think, like most polls, thought that this election was not going to come out like the way it did. There was going to be a possibility of a repudiation of republicanism in New Hampshire and across the country. It didn't happen.
right.
It didn't happen. And how did they get that wrong? And did you get that wrong too?
Well, you know, I'm not in the polling business, so.
So you don't have to answer. Okay.
No, I'm in the prognostication business, and it's one of the reasons why, you know, in the Sunday News I did a story before the election about is Sununu going to have coattails, and I got a lot of pushback, not from this Democrat, but I got a lot of pushback from a lot of Democrats saying, "Oh, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
That can't possibly happen.
Well, you-
what are you talking about?"
But you suggested Jeannie Shaheen might
you know,
have some coattails too.
Well, that's right, and you can make, and this is back to my point. You can make a case in a limited fashion, right? That she did, you know, which is to say this: is if the Executive Council goes 4-1,
right?
which it has,
Right. Yes, it has.
and the State Senate goes 14-10,
Yeah.
which it has,
Yeah.
it shouldn't be 215 in the House. Okay.
Yeah.
It should be like 230,
Right.
240 in the House,
Yeah.
which is, and that's my point. Why is it 215?
Yeah.
And the reason is Shaheen is why it's 215 and it's not 230 or 240.
Yeah.
Okay? Is that enough people, you know,
Right.
independents in a number of these communities looked for, you know, they voted for Sheen, they voted for Sununu, and they started to go Republican, and then they looked for a Democrat they could support. And but, you know, I mean, the game of polling, I don't know where they go from here. And it's
Yeah.
and it's not
Well, they got to go to the woodshed and get beat up, I think.
right. Well, and you know, and I don't know. I mean, so as you know, and your son knows a lot better than all of us sitting here. I mean, that business has become so unpredictable by the very nature of how we
Yeah.
communicate now.
Yeah.
You know, right? Which is, if so many people have cut the cord, they don't
Right.
even have a home phone,
Right.
right? And a number of people have cut the cable. They don't even have
And the people
TV
that
with
haven't cut the
Comcast.
cord are not answering the phone if it's not a number they want to hear.
Right.
Right.
exactly.
So, you know, it becomes harder and harder to be more and more certain of whatever results
yeah.
you're getting. You know,
So do you think that people that talk to these pollsters are not telling what they really think, that they maybe planning to vote for Trump, but they don't feel like they can say that to a pollster?
Yeah, I think there was some of that. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't, I think what happened, there's a lot of explanations for what happened. That is part of it. The other part, like I said, is you're when you're having to work harder and harder and harder and harder to get a finite number that's a really true sample,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Then it ain't a true sample.
That's
Yeah,
good.
that's a
you
good
know,
point.
right?
That's very well expressed.
And who the heck are those people,
Right.
right? Who are really? Because I know Lou's. I'm pretty sure Lou feels this way. You know, there used to be a time, not a long time ago, okay,
Right.
where I knew a lot of people who got polled in the election.
Yes.
Okay, and now I ask people, and I can't find anybody
Right.
who's getting polled, right,
Right,
in
right.
this election.
Yeah, that's
and that
interesting,
sort of
isn't it?
tells me, okay, so
right.
who are they? I don't mean
are
they're not real. Of course they're real. I just mean, you know, if they're not as ubiquitous as they used to be, then in all likelihood, the results you're going to get may not be as reliable.
Right.
You know.
I think they've got to change the way polling takes place. The audience now is on cell phones. I mean, they don't have landlines. That's number one. Number two, the lie quotient, or the I want to get rid of you quick quotient, becomes a real factor in the business. And as a result of that, I think look at the polls are very inconsistent. They're very inconsistent everywhere.
Right.
And people in the past, people depended upon polling. If you look at the Bill Clinton administration, they used to do overnight polling all the time, and they would tailor the message the next day based on the results of the poll.
Oh, really?
You know,
Yeah, no, definitely. And, you know,
those-
the whole school
those-
uniform thing, remember,
Right.
you know, all the sorts of things.
Right.
You know, welfare reform was another one
Yes,
where
right.
he identified before any other national Democrat did,
Yes,
frankly,
yeah.
that it was time,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and so we're going to do welfare reform.
Right.
And that was driven by polling. That
Sure.
was, you know,
It-
he
it-
saw the mood out there before
Right.
most anybody else did.
Right.
And I think, I mean, and I'm certain they're still doing it, and I'm certain they're all still doing it to a certain degree, you know. But
Yeah.
the other, I mean, you can't, and this is what I meant by one-off, and don't overanalyze this election as
Right.
what's going to happen every time else. And by that I mean this, is if you got 4 years, right, of somebody with the megaphone, okay, saying fake news
Fake news, right?
all the time. And he's not talking just about the media. He's talking about the establishment,
Right.
right? He's talking about pollsters,
Yes.
right? And, you know, talking heads, right? You know, and so if that's the dominant message out there, right? Don't be surprised if a whole lot of people who are getting polled, you know, you aren't getting a straight scoop, right?
Right.
And and like I said, with the new administration, if that occurs, could that change? It's going to be different,
Right.
right? I mean,
Oh, it's good.
you know,
for sure.
I mean, if there's a new administration, you're not going to hear that every day,
Right.
and so will that change how people respond when they're queried about candidates and issues and the rest?
Yeah.
You know, it certainly could. I mean, it's sort of like that phrase, poisoning the well.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you poison the well, you know, then and as you know, this has affected our business so significally, right?
Yes.
You know, which
Yeah.
is and
How do you expect to do your business
well,
in the next 2 years?
right. Well, it'll be interesting to you know, and certainly a different environment, and social media, of course, has completely changed our
Yes.
business, right? And how we're viewed in the media on social media. I have to, and I monitor it religiously. I spend a lot of time on social media because that's where a lot of the discourse in this state and across the country goes, and the rest of it. But talking about, you know, the polarization that
Right.
just feeds into that.
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Which is so much of the social,
Do you think
so
you-
much on social media
Do you
is.
think we can overcome that? Or
Yeah, I do. I mean, you
How?
know, well, I mean,
without bringing back the fairness doctrine, how can we overcome that?
well, I mean, I think we overcome some of that basically by more working together and trying to, and
Yeah, but
we
that,
do.
I don't see much of that happening.
Well,
Hope I'm wrong.
well, you may, yeah, you
Yeah.
know, well, you're not alone, but this is, and this is my point is, and it all feeds into itself, Bob. Okay, this is what I'm trying to say is that so many people are so negative about the future because all they see out there is negativity,
Right.
And all they see is people fighting with one another and arguing with one another and not listening to one another.
Yes.
So all of a sudden you think we can never do that again, and I disagree.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and we, right? I mean, a funny thing happened, and it wasn't funny. It was tragic, and it was crazy. But I'm old enough to remember we were damn polarized, and there was a lot of hate out there after the 2000 election.
Right.
And then the towers got hit.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And a whole lot of
And
discourse
then we had a
changed,
common enemy.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Changed a whole lot, and
Yeah.
that's why I said it's just.
We don't want to use that example to get back
But-
together.
But an event.
Exactly.
There are events that will happen over which we have no control that are going to change the course
Yeah,
of
yeah, that's
Totally.
history. And that's happened repeatedly. And I think it will happen because we are going to have to find the new normal.
Right.
And we're gonna come out of this pandemic, and we're gonna go find the new normal. And I think it's going to be K through 12 education. It's going to be post-secondary education.
Yeah, there's our educator.
When you think of what's going to happen, I mean, things have got to happen. Change has got to happen, and it's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. The people are going to demand it.
Oh, we're out of time.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you.
You were such a treasure,
Right.
and
Oh,
I
it's
just can't
great.
tell you
Great being
how
with you
great it is
both.
to have you. Your insights are just unbelievable, and we are really glad that you're the dean of New Hampshire Political Reporters. May you long continue to serve.
Oh, we'll miss you in Concord, Bob.
I'm
But,
gonna
you know,
miss you.
You're not going to miss us. We know that. You know,
The only thing I can say is not being in the majority makes it a little easier to
there
step
you
out
go.
and not worrying about being chairman again. And now I understand Mr. Hinch is talking about bringing us back to the State House. I just,
It'll be great. It'll be great.
it'll be great. It'll be great.
We'll all make it work.
Right. We'll make it work.
But we'll count on you to have good insights wherever you are
Thanks, Bob.
and carry on along. Thanks, Lou.
Thank you, Bob.